Hello, ghouls, and welcome to the 36th episode of the Shrouded in Darkness podcast. Yeah, we're going to nix the whole season number and just count the episodes because your girl loves seeing those numbers increase. And I love that you're sticking with me. So as you know, this podcast, we shine a light on the cases that the world forgot. And of course, I'm your true crime obsessed host, Marlena. And I hope you ghouls are having the absolute best day. Quick disclosure reminder, our goal is to always educate, discuss, and bring fresh light to cases. Some of our cases, like today's, involve some pretty sensitive and gruesome information that is definitely not suitable for all ages. You have been warned. Before we dive in, let's look at our sources for the day. BBC.com, Wikipedia, TN Ledger, the Morbid Podcast, and the Forensic Tales podcast. Let me just add a note here. I love that my own podcast and its necessary research is helping me to find new shows to follow and to tune into. The true crime podcast industry it's absolutely saturated with some really great shows and some really cool people too. So do yourself a favor and totally go down that rabbit hole. Now, on to our case for the day. Today we're going to Dallas, Texas, known for its iconic skyline and rich cultural arts. Allow me to introduce you to Angela Marie Samota. Born September 19th, 1964 in Alameda, California to Frank and Betty Ruth Samota. Angie, as we're going to call her from this point forward, she is described as a friendly and smart person. She's academically focused, and this continues into her college years when she attends Southern Methodist University in Dallas. Here, she studies computer science and electrical engineering. As a freshman, she actually meets Sheila Wysocki, and at first, the two aren't super close. Angie happens to be dating a guy that Sheila is not a fan of. But as soon as Angie and he break up, the girls quickly become the best of friends. Angie was said to be the life of the party, always a joy to be around. She also served as the social chairman of a school sorority. This was the Zeta Tau Alpha sorority. So we're going to move on to 1984. Angie is now 20 years old. She's still attending the university in Dallas. She and Sheila are still close as ever. Much of her focus does remain on her education. Angie has her own off-campus housing now. And when she's not studying or hanging out with Sheila, she's with her boyfriend, Ben McCall. Ben is a little older. He works in construction and pretty much seems to have his life together. It's October 12th. Again, it's 1984. Angie goes to the state fair with two of her friends, Russell Buchanan and Anita Kadala. Ben opted not to go since he has to wake up early for work the following day. Again, he's in construction. After enjoying the state fair, the group visits the Rio Room Dance Club. They stay there till around 1 a.m., and then Angie takes her friends home. First Russell, then Anita. Before returning to her condo, Angie makes a quick stop at Ben's place to tell him goodnight, which honestly is super sweet. I don't even think she went inside. I think she stood at the door, they said their goodnights, and she went home. Because by 1:45, she is at her condo. And at this point, she's actually calling Ben in a little bit of a panic. There is an unknown man at her condo. He's asking to use her phone and her bathroom. It's unclear when that man arrives at her condo. If he was there when she got home, if he shows up later. And we don't also know whether or not she lets him inside. But either way, she does not stay on the phone long with Ben. Instead, she abruptly hangs up and says she'll call him right back. Only she never does. For obvious reasons, Ben grows a little worried. He tries calling Angie, but his phone calls go unanswered. So he drives to her place. Now, I'm not sure how far his drive was, the distance between his place and Angie's. One report said it may have been 30 minutes, and I'm not sure how important this is to the case, but I wanted to make that known. So Ben arrives at Angie's condo. He's still not getting her by phone, and she's not answering her door. There are a couple conflicting reports on whether or not her door was unlocked. Either way, Ben does not enter the place. He immediately calls the police, and they arrive on the scene by 2:17 a.m. Ghouls, this is less than an hour from when Angie calls Ben in a panic. Remember, she called Ben at 1:45 about the man at her door. By 2:17, which is 32 minutes, the police are arriving on scene. So, when police enter the residence, they do find Angie. They find her lifeless body on her bed. She is naked and covered in blood. The medical examiner would later find 18 stab wounds, as well as evidence of sexual assault. And police on the scene say that her attack was so brutal and aggressive that her heart was practically pulled out of her chest cavity in the stabbing. A few other things we find at the scene. There's no signs of forced entry. There's blood in the bathtub and the bathroom sink, and this could indicate that the perpetrator was trying to clean up after the murder. Multiple samples are taken from the scene, like DNA, blood, fingernail scrapings. So at this time, remember, we're in 1984, so technology was very limited. The only kind of analysis that investigators could do is blood typing. But, interestingly enough, the sample that they used from the crime scene, we learned that the suspect is a non-secretor. Now, in simplest terms, this basically means that the person doesn't leave antigens in their fluids. Therefore, the blood type cannot be determined. And there's only maybe 20% of people that are non-secretors. So this could actually help find the person that did this. Okay, let's look at our immediate suspects. Based on the crime scene and the brutal attack, it's kind of easy to surmise that Angie probably knew her killer. Remember, no forced entry. So first we have Ben McCall, the boyfriend. It's one of the first people that's usually added to the persons of interest list. The significant other, the spouse. That's usually the first person questioned. But Ben is quickly ruled out because when he provides a DNA sample, he does not fit the non-secretor bill. So we move on to the next person of interest, Angie's ex-boyfriend. Now, I'm unable to confirm his name, but it does sound like suspicion on him is warranted, because we know that he once cut up Angie's clothes and threatened her with a knife. But, just like Ben, he is quickly ruled out because of his DNA. Our third person of interest is Russell Buchanan. That's one of the friends that Angie had hung out with that day and one of the last people to see her. Now, we know that Russell only lives 5 minutes from Angie's condo. When he was first questioned, he didn't even realize Angie had been murdered. He says after she dropped him off, he went straight to bed. The next day, there was a wedding he had to attend, and then the next day, he visited family. So he was kind of going nonstop and hadn't checked the news or anything. An important note, Russell was a non-secretor. And again, remember, this is a super rare characteristic. But we also need to realize that Russell is 23 years old. He has his own alibi about going to bed and being gone the rest of the weekend. He's about to start grad school for his architect degree. But none of this matters because the police think he fits perfectly into the crime. Last person to see her, and the fact that he was a non-secretor. So those two things really kind of pinpoint him. So obviously Russell is brought in for questioning. multiple times, mind you. But he tells the same story every time. He even agrees to a polygraph test and passes. Although later on, that outcome supposedly changes and states that it was inconclusive. I'm not sure what that's about, but that is part of what I have found. The police are so much after Russell being the suspect that he is forced to hire his own attorney. His family actually encourages him to do this. At one point, the police use Sheila. Now remember, Sheila is Angie's best friend. They get her to be part of the investigation. They basically paint the picture that Russell, no other option, has to be the killer. So they convince her to kind of hang out with him. They go out to dinner. She starts asking him questions to see if she can catch him in a lie. But this doesn't work. His story never changes. Now, the case goes cold. Police never have enough evidence to arrest anyone. And life moves on. Russell continues to grad school like he planned. He gets married. He returns to Texas. Sheila moves to Nashville. She gets married. She has kids of her own. 20 years pass. We're now in 2004. We find Sheila at home and she's working on a Bible study. Angie appears to her. I'm not talking about a hallucination or hearing Angie's voice. Angie is standing directly in front of her friend. This is like a wake-up call for Sheila. She knows what she needs to do. She knows she needs to get this to not be a cold case, that she needs the police to reopen her best friend's murder case, that we're not done fighting. So Sheila starts calling. She makes more than 700 phone calls to the Dallas police. And she's not the only one. She gets some of the sorority sisters to also start calling. So the police are getting hounded with phone calls of people trying to get them to open the case. But time and time again, they are denied. So Sheila takes things into her own hands by earning her very own private investigator certificate. Finally, in 2006, circumstances change. A new detective, a female detective, is put on Angie's case, Linda Crum. And Linda and Sheila work together to make something happen with Angie's case. Evidence that we thought was long gone is found and tested using the technology that wasn't even available in the 80s. So now we're in 2008. Ghouls, we are 24 years after Angela Samota's murder. This new testing gets us a hit. And let me tell you, everyone is in utter shock that the DNA does not tie back to Russell Buchanan. Nope, it is a name that was never even on the radar. A complete stranger. Donald Bess. Now, at the time of the murder in 1984, Donald was actually out on parole. He'd been released just 7 months prior to that. He had been arrested for rape and assault, and according to Donald, that's all he'd ever done. He never killed anyone. But his DNA matched Angie's rape kit and the scrapings under her fingernails. So he was undoubtedly there that night. He's the monster that killed Angie. DNA does not lie. Donald's trial happens in 2010. It lasts a mere 4 days. The jury, they debated for maybe an hour. Guilty. Donald Bess is guilty and sentenced to death. What's, to me, the worst part of all this, when Donald Bess was in prison before Angie's murder, he had been sentenced to 25 years for that rape and assault charge, but he was released after 6 years. He should have absolutely still been incarcerated. Instead, they let the monster out and his crimes escalated. He never actually made it to his death sentence, by the way. Donald passed away in 2022 from a heart attack. Interesting fact, though. Remember how I mentioned that we thought evidence was lost? Well, that's because it was reported that the DNA evidence from Angie's case had been destroyed by a flood. And it wasn't until years later when Sheila's when she was just insistent on making something happen, and when she got the case reopened, that's when they found that the evidence was still there and still usable. Russell Buchanan was finally exonerated. The police actually call him, tell him they found the real killer, and they apologize. That cloud of murderous guilt that hung over him for far too long was finally gone. But you know, something crazy? He's not bitter. Russell understood that the police were trying to do their job, trying to find out who hurt his friend. And great thing about it is that Russell has actually received awards now for his architect skills. He is a celebrated architect, famous for his contemporary and box-style homes. Sheila Wasaki, well, she continues to work as a private investigator for her firm. It's called Without Warning. Her original plans were to stop investigating once Angela's case was solved, but there was such an outpouring response from people that it just kept her going. It was kind of obvious that her services were needed. In 2016, something else good that came from this case, the Dallas Police Department reestablished a unit that specifically looks into the cold cases. Now, for my thoughts on this one, it's baffling, really, the whole case. Usually when we see such violence in the crime, we usually find a familiar face at the end, you know. But this one, that's not what happened. This was a complete stranger. Someone that didn't really have a motive from what we can gather. I mean, we don't even know if he knew Angie, if he had met her before. Maybe there was a quick passing of the two and he just instantly became obsessed. Maybe he followed her home from the state fair or the dance club. Maybe he had been stalking her for longer than that. We don't know. We don't know all those details, and I'm guessing we're never going to know now that he's gone. I will say that I love that Sheila never stopped fighting for her friend, and I love that she built something amazing from all of this that has actually helped a lot of people. So despite how incredibly awful this case is, at least something good came from it. And speaking of that, kudos to Russell Buchanan for coming out on the absolute top after all the hell that he went through. Well, I think this wraps up our case for the week. I would love to hear your thoughts, your theories. Let us know what you think about this one. You can connect with us on Instagram, WordPress, Patreon, all the listening platforms. Just search for the Shrouded in Darkness podcast. As always, ghouls, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have a case from your hometown that you would like to be spotlighted, just let me know. Let me hear from you. You can tune in next week as we dive into the case of Jason Jokowski. Until next time, ghouls, remember, the truth is always hiding in the darkness.